All right, so introduction to morality. Where to begin with this topic? Where to begin with this video? Well, I guess we can start with a little bit of house cleaning. I just want to let you know what you're in for because this topic, this video, after writing it out, I realized got very, very long. It's a very long introduction to morality. And so what I'm going to do is probably upload this video in two parts. Part one, which is primarily going to be focused on defining some key terms that we need to understand in order to move forward. And then the second part will be really zeroing in on morality and its relation to the emotional aspect of consciousness. And so I'll probably do part one, part two, and then I'll probably upload the entire thing as well. So you'll probably see 3 videos coming out, but just understand it's all the same information. I just don't want anyone to see an hour-and-a-half long video on the introduction to morality topic and then feel like they're overwhelmed by that long of a video. And likewise, if you prefer long videos, I will make sure that that's up for you as well, because I personally prefer longer formed videos as well. And so let's just get into this. Let's start by how we should always start when we're introducing topics to people, and we start by defining some key terms. And I define them based on how I use these terms so that you can understand what I'm talking about. I don't particularly care how other people use these terms because, well, it's not how I use these terms. And so if I want to come to terms with somebody, I will. But in lieu of being able to communicate with somebody else, because I'm just talking to a camera by myself, we're going to just have to use my definitions of these terms. And so the terms that we have to start by defining are first, consciousness. And I understand that I've defined consciousness in 3 separate videos now, but I still I've never actually made a complete summary of consciousness. I've never actually summarized it very quickly, and so that's what I'm gonna start by doing that. And we have to start with consciousness if we're going to talk about morality, because quoting Sam Harris, consciousness is the basis of human morality. So we have to start with the foundations, and I'm going to summarize it here. Just also just in case you're new to this channel and you haven't seen the other 3 videos that I made on consciousness, and that's okay because I'm going to summarize it here. And then we can move on, and I'm going to define morality again. And I'm just going to confine that term a little bit more, really just make it a bit more of a fleshed out definition of it and what I mean by it. And also, in doing so, there's a couple of terms inside the definition of morality that I feel that I need to define as well. And those are right, wrong, and behavior or action. And I'm only going to briefly go over behavior or action because, it was like 2 videos ago that we talked in detail about what action is or what human behavior is. And so I don't think that we need to go over that much, but with right and wrong, because they're the crux of natural law and they underpin this entire understanding of our reality. I'm going to spend a lot of time defining those 2 little terms so that they're very clear, very concise, and so that you'll be able to understand me as we continue to move forward into this topic. And so, starting with human consciousness. What is human consciousness? Well, consciousness is the state or quality of sentient beings to find or create meaning from the arrangement of information both within oneself and within the realm in which the self exists and operates. And so, in order for a conscious individual to find or create meaning from the data structures within the individual's observable playing field, which is really what consciousness is, this observable playing field, the individual needs to be able to interact with or experience those data structures. And it's consciousness itself that acts as this operating system that allows us to do that. And it allows us to interact with this stuff both within ourselves, what it perceives to be, or what we perceive to be as within ourselves, like our thoughts, our emotions, and also in the outer world of our actions and our behavior in the real world, in physical reality. And so, ultimately, all that consciousness is experience. It's human consciousness is experience. It's all that a human can experience. And what I do and what I prefer to do is parse topics. And basically parsing topics just means breaking them apart into their constituent parts so that we can study each part and then bring them all back together again so that we can understand the thing as a whole much more effectively. It's like breaking apart an engine to try to understand what or how the engine was made, and then you just put the engine back together again, and that's a way more effective way to understanding a topic than to just look at an engine in its entirety and pretending like you know anything about that thing. And so when we break consciousness into its constituent parts, all that we're doing is trying to figure out the kinds of experiences that a human can experience and separate them out based upon the way that we experience them. And when we do this, we see that there's 3 distinct different types of experiences that a human can experience. Okay? There's very simply, like just think about just think about experiences that a human can have and see if you can separate them out in a particular way. And if you do this, you can see that there's a few different ways a human can experience this reality that we find ourselves in. And one of the ways is simply just by doing an action, like moving my hand, like actually moving or doing something in this world, creating something, being something. And so that's one of the aspects of consciousness. It's doing something. It's an action. Okay, and these actions are very distinct, and we separate them out from these other 2 aspects of consciousness because of the way they act and operate, based upon the way that we experience them. And so, for example, moving my hand, taking a breath, which I needed because I was not breathing there for probably first 8 minutes of this video. Those things that I just did, moving my hand or breathing, those are actions in the real world. You can see my actions, which is interesting. That separates them out from the other 2 aspects of consciousness. And also, they're physical, which separates them from the other 2 aspects of consciousness as well, kind of. And also, that means that they're bound by the laws of physics, which is interesting as well. And so, if we ask ourselves, like, what else can I do? Simply by just asking that question, you realize that there is something that you can do that cannot be really defined as an action, really. Because when I ask you a question, you think about that question, you're thinking. And while technically thinking is a verb, it's an action, there is a little bit of overlap in these 3 aspects. But as you can see, that the experience of thought is fundamentally different from the experience of action, okay? And it's different because the experience of action is done in the physical world, whereas the experience of thought is done in this perceived mental world. And because of that, thought doesn't do what physical actions do, and therefore they're not bound by the laws of physics. And that's interesting as well. And then so finally, the 3rd aspect of consciousness is the kind of like a bridge between these two, like the gulf between thought and action, and that is feeling, the ability to feel, which is an entirely different experience from an action, because you don't really act or do a thing when you're feeling. You feel a feeling. And so, like, just simply me by moving my arm, I feel the air on my hand, and like I feel the resistance of my flexibility of motion in my elbow. And those are feelings. They're different from an action, and they're different from a thought as well, because when you think about something, a thought doesn't make you feel, it doesn't necessarily make you feel something. Like when you don't feel a thought, basically is what I'm trying to say. You don't feel a thought. A thought can elicit emotions, can elicit feelings, but the thought itself isn't something that you feel. You feel the feelings that the thought creates, that the thought engenders. And so, both the experience of thought and action can cause the reaction of feelings. They can and do, because all 3 of these aspects of consciousness elicit one another. They are all doing, at the end of the day, trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to get you to take action in the real world, trying to get you to do things, okay? And ultimately, they elicit each other, because when you're doing an action and you're not thinking about it, and then by doing that and not thinking for a while, you might stop and go, wait, why am I doing that? That's a thought. It actually causes you to stop and think and reason, and give yourself reasons why you're doing the thing. Likewise, most of the things that we do will elicit emotions within ourselves, will elicit feelings, but feelings can also elicit thoughts. Certain sensations can elicit memories inside of our heads. And it's just interesting how these things all interact with each other, because at their most general levels, these are just three things that conscious human beings can experience: thought, emotion, and action. That's all that they are. That's all that consciousness is. And we need to study these aspects of consciousness separately to just better understand each separate one. But also, at the end of the day, we have to understand human consciousness as one singular thing, and these three things working together, acting as one. Because ultimately, consciousness, thought, emotion, and action of the individual is all about creation, action in the real world, doing things, becoming new things, transforming ourselves, having new experiences, which is all about, which is basically the definition of expanding our consciousness. And so, if you're experiencing more things, if you're doing more things, all that means is that you're creating more things. You're expanding your consciousness. You're having more experiences. You're doing new and more unique things in your life. And this is all that there is to do for humans. And so our entire conscious state is designed to get us to do those things, because when we do these things, really at the end of the day, what all of this stuff does is allow us to have a higher probability for survival in the real world and replication, because that's really what this is all about, okay? So ultimately, we master consciousness by binding the three aspects of consciousness together. So there is a goal here. There is a strategy to this. We want to bind these three aspects of consciousness together such that there is no contradiction between our thoughts, emotions, and actions. As we think, so we feel, so we behave. This is ultimately the ideal state of the human being, okay? So you're not in contradiction with yourself. You're not acting in contradiction with yourself. So you're thinking something that's making you feel something, and then you're doing something that is not in relation to those thoughts and those feelings. Maybe to try to make somebody feel good or to protect yourself for some reason. That is not a comfortable position, not a comfortable existence to have. It doesn't feel good to be like that, okay? And so ultimately what we're looking for is internal sovereignty. It's bringing yourself, your being, into unity or non-duality, and ultimately allows you to be the master over your own consciousness, master over your own fate. This is true self-discipline, self-control, self-love, and self-mastery. And I studied consciousness because all that stuff, self-discipline, self-mastery, self-love, all of that stuff is all about success, okay? And if we understand consciousness, we can understand how to be successful in whatever we want to be successful in. And that's what I want to teach people, because the more people that are sovereign individuals that can be successful in whatever they want to be successful in, that will ultimately foster freedom for all at the collective. It can't be done unless we're able to master consciousness at the individual level. And that's why I spend so much time talking about consciousness. On top of that, also, I don't focus on a singular niche. I don't talk about how to be successful on social media. I don't talk about how to be successful at starting a Shopify store. I don't talk about how to have a successful family or relationship. I talk about how to be successful in whatever you want to be successful in. And I don't care what that is. Okay? I just want you to be successful and a sovereign individual, someone who can actually do it and command that doing, that action, that being for yourself, because that's how we're going to get ourselves out of the mess that we are currently in. It's all got to start at the individual level, and then it fosters freedom for all at the collective level. And so, one last point, and then we'll get into morality, because we're going to talk about this a lot later on, but we have to remind ourselves that we are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, and we're not even our actions. All those three things, okay, those three aspects of consciousness, remember, are just experiences. They're experiences, okay? So thoughts and emotions are experiences. They aren't you. And just like, the action or the experience of surfing or going to the gym. Like you wouldn't say, I'm Jim, I'm a Jim. I'm not, you wouldn't say that like my being is a surfer. Those are just experiences that you're doing. And it's the same thing with thought and emotion. We have to separate ourselves from our thoughts and our emotions and our actions as well, in order for us to objectively observe them and study them, and not try to control them or protect them as who we are, because they're not us, okay? And, we're going to talk about this a little later on to a great degree, because I hope that me just saying that, well, you're not your thoughts, emotions, or actions, then, well, what are you? Well, that's a very fun question to answer, and I look forward to answering it later on. I'll save that one because it's a fun one. So, moving on, because we're done with the summary of consciousness. So, morality. We can talk about that for a little bit now. Well, first, I really do believe that people have a very misunderstood conception as to what morality is. And I think people like to think about it like as if it were like ethics or something, being like a more ethical person, being a more religious person, whatever that means. And I don't really understand. I get a kind of an idea as to why that is, but that's not really the point of morality. It's like, yes, it's true, okay? If you become a more moral person, you will become, naturally, a more ethical person. But that's not the reason why we study morality, okay? We learn morality simply because acting morally offers us a higher probability for success and happiness in our lives, and becoming a more ethical person really is just a byproduct of being a more moral person or living a more moral life. And if that sounded weird to you, I really do think it's because we're using a different definition of what morality is. And because, I understand if you're looking at this from like a anti-religious point of view, and you're hearing somebody say, oh, if you're a more moral person, that person lives a better life. And you're like, well, that's just religion. You're going to try to stuff religion down my throat. And it's like, no, that's not what morality is about, okay? And so we have to start by first defining this term morality and its constituent parts as well, so that you can understand just exactly what I'm talking about. So simply, as I've defined multiple times in the past, as I've alluded to in the past, morality is the knowledge of the objective difference between right action and wrong action. So there's a few terms in that definition that I need to clear up, including morality itself, which we're going to spend a little bit of time on, but I just want to get out of the way the action and the behavior part, because action and behavior are synonyms, they're one and the same, and it just implies existence, okay? Action just implies existence, and it's just a human doing something or being something. So it's like whatever you're doing, your behavior in the real world, everything that another individual can observe, that is action, that's behavior, okay? And we've talked about this existence and action and being and doing a whole lot in like two videos prior to this, so I'm not going to spend that much time on that topic here. I just wanted to point out that I'm just trying to confine morality to what it concerns itself with, okay? And so morality only concerns itself with the actual real-world actions of the individual. And this is because our actions in the real world are the only thing that we are actually in control of. Everything else is guided by circumstance, chance and circumstance, where you're born, where you're brought up, where you're raised, who your parents were, stuff like that, stuff that you have absolutely no control over. History as well. And so, as we dive deeper into the topic of morality, I just want to point out that all wrong behavior, like what is a wrong action, is wrong simply because it is always the initiation of aggression, of violence against another sentient being. And that's important because thoughts and emotions, those two experiences, they can't act on another sentient being. And therefore, morality does not concern itself with your thoughts and emotions. It only concerns itself with your actions, because wrong actions are only the initiation of violence against another sentient being, something that thoughts and emotions cannot do. And the point of me bringing this up is the fact that being moral has nothing to do with eradicating bad thoughts from your mind. It has nothing to do with ending embarrassing emotional impulses or urges that you may have from time to time. It doesn't care about those things, because at the end of the day, you actually don't even have control over those embarrassing urges and impulses, or those bad or negative thoughts that you have, okay? The only thing that you can control are your actions in the real world. The only thing that you can control are the things that you do, your behavior, your actions, okay? So, also I want to point out that, when you do try to quell your ability to think, to imagine new things, to imagine a a new world that is wholly different from your current state of affairs, you need your imagination to be able to run wild in that situation, because you're trying to think about something that is unknown to you, and you need to allow your imagination to do that. You also need to allow your imagination to imagine what it would be like if you committed a wrong, if you murdered somebody, because then you get to experience that idea, that imagery, and the feelings that those images that your imagination created, how those feelings feel. Okay, so we need to allow our thoughts to do this stuff. We need our thoughts to sometimes be wrong, to feel the feelings that they create, that they engender. And then we go, oh, I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of murdering somebody. I don't like that feeling of just imagining it. So just imagine actually doing it, for example. Okay, and so I just point that out again because of this misconception as to what morality is for so many people. Nothing to do with that. It's just your actions, okay? You can still have bad thoughts. Just don't act on them. That's the point of having an imagination. All right, so moving on. Next, let's spend an inordinate amount of time talking about what a right is, talking about what a wrong is at their most general levels. We'll get more specific later on. I just want you to know what I mean. I just want you to know what I mean when I use these terms, okay? So, what is a right? A right is what is correct, okay? That's all that means. A right is correct. What is correct? Well, correct means free from error or in accordance with the truth. This means what is right is correct or is the truth. Excuse me. So, if I say that 2 plus 2 equals 4, that's right. That's correct. This is all that being right means, okay? It means you gave the correct answer. And note here, it also means and is synonymous with being moral and or good. Those are the same words, okay? And so you're moral when you're right, when you're correct. That's all that being moral means, okay? And that's all that being good means, okay? Just think about like the Verizon commercials, the old Verizon commercial with the guy who'd be like, can you hear me now? Good. Can you hear me now? Good. Okay? So he's asking the question and somebody's saying yes. And he's like, that's what he wants. That's the desired result that he wants. So he said, good. That's right. That's moral. That's correct. That's all that this is. Being moral isn't about religion or being humble or pious or anything like that. It's about being right and knowing why you're right. That's what it's about, okay? And so being moral means that you're good, that you're right, that you're correct, that you're true, because your actions don't break the laws of nature and they get you the desired result that you want. I want the desired result of knowing what 2 plus 2 equals. If I say that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and that's correct, then that's right, that's good, that's moral, that's true. Okay, because it got me the desired result, and because it's correct, and I know why, because I know what plus means, and I know what 2 means, and I put those two together, makes 4. So, unfortunately, unlike in mathematics, in life, since we can never be perfectly right or perfectly true in anything really, because of circumstance and execution of your right answer, so you may have the right answer, but you may not be able to execute entirely to a proper ability in order to actually do the right action. It's ultimately about being most right, the most right that you can possibly be, the most correct that you can be in any particular situation. And so, how would I describe an action that is a right so that we know it when we see it, okay? So this is interesting. So we're out of the realm of mathematics. We're talking about actions in the real world. Understand that numbers don't exist in the real world. They're abstract things. And morality really only concerns itself with actions in the real world, which aren't nearly as precise as mathematics. So how would I see a right action? Like, how would I be like, okay, that's right action and that's wrong action? How would I separate those out? Well, a right action is any action that is moral, which acts or which makes it acting in harmony. The action is acting in harmony with natural law, because actions based on it do not result in harm to other sentient beings. So again, you can tell what a right action is because all rights do not cause harm to other sentient beings. Now we're going to talk about this in greater detail a little later on, I think a couple of videos from now, because this needs clarification, because it lies, this right and wrong, this doing no harm or doing harm, violating the laws of nature, This lies at the crux of natural law. This is the crux of natural law. This is the heart of natural law. If you can understand this, then there's really not much that you won't be able to understand on your own, okay? So, right, good, moral, correct, true, these all mean the same thing. Being good means correct. Being right. Correct is moral. When someone says that you have a right to do something, what they're saying, or what they should be saying, is that that action is morally good, justified, correct, it's acceptable. And it's acceptable and correct simply because that action, that right action, doesn't cause harm to other sentient beings. That's all this means. And so understand that this is how I define moral. Also understand that people are using this term very improperly right now. So just be aware of that and utilize this knowledge as a way to try to figure out whether somebody is using the term moral properly, particular politicians these days. So, rights are both an action that we can do and, very importantly, a thing that we can own. This is a fundamentally important thing. We're going to talk about property rights a little bit later on because ownership of our rights is fundamentally important to us understanding this topic of morality as a whole and understanding the laws of nature as well, natural law as well. Because it changed everything. This understanding of being able to own a right really changed a whole lot of things in Western civilization, in civilization as a whole as well. But what's important to understand now that we have to understand is that every single person on the face of the earth, every single human being on the face of the earth has the exact same rights as every other individual. Not one person has a single more right than any other person because rights are universal. They come with the human operating system. They come with consciousness. They come with our state of being, all right? We're born with them. Just like we're born with 10 fingers, just like born with 2 eyes and a heart. There's certain things that come with being a human, and our rights are one of them, okay? And so, this is from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our rights don't come from the government. That's the point I'm trying to make. The government simply exists to secure and protect the rights of its people from being infringed upon. And again, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are not the only rights that we have. They're just the fundamental rights of they're fundamentally important rights that kind of engender all other rights that we also have. So it's not an exhaustive list. I'm just pointing that out. So be right, be correct, do not cause harm to other sentient beings, and this is what makes you moral. This is all that moral means. Don't harm other people. So, unless your rights are being infringed upon. So, in order to be moral, you have to be right. You have to exist as being right. This means that you have to know and understand things in order to be moral. In order to be a moral person, you have to know and understand things. Because if you don't know what 2 plus 2 is, then, it's going to be hard to have the correct answer for that, to be moral based upon your knowledge of mathematics, okay? So ultimately, knowledge is always the answer. Understand that. There's no getting around this. You have to know things in order to be a moral individual. More knowledge is always the answer. It's always going to help you. If you want to be right, if you want to be correct, more knowledge is what's going to get you there, okay? Not less knowledge. So, moving on to the next definition that we're going to spend an inordinate amount of time talking about, and that would be wrong. So if a right is correct, moral, and good, and true, well, what do you think a wrong is? Well, a wrong is incorrect and not based in truth. So incorrect, you have that in as a prefix. That prefix just means not, and then correct. So incorrect means not correct. So it's faulty or not in accordance with truth. This is what is wrong, false, immoral, and yes, even evil as well. So if I say that 2 plus 2 equals 5, that's wrong, that's incorrect, that's false, and immoral. This is actually what it means to sin. to give a wrong answer, to be wrong in something. Okay? And that's all that this means. That's all that sinning means. Okay? Sinning just means that you committed a wrong. You did something improperly, incorrectly. Further, a wrong is immoral and in opposition to natural law because actions based in it result in harm to other sentient beings, okay? And, you're looking at 2 + 2 = 5. Like, what's the big deal about getting that wrong? Well, a simple error in this space shuttle, this orbiter, this Mars orbiter in like the 1990s, it was a simple error in changing metric units to imperial units. Just a little tiny wrong. What's the big deal about a little wrong? Well, it destroyed the spaceship and cost U.S. taxpayers $125 million, and all of that research that we could have had was gone. It was blown out the window because of one wrong action. So being wrong, it caused harm to every individual who paid taxes into NASA, okay? And so you can look at this in terms of schooling, failing a test, being wrong on a test. That causes harm to your being. That causes harm to your potential opportunities later on in life. It causes harm to your school because public schools are funded based upon their success in a lot of ways. And so you're hurting your school. You're certainly hurting your family. You're hurting your parents, your mom and dad. They're going to be looking at that, and that's going to hurt them. They're mad at you when you fail a test when you're young because it hurts them. All right? It physically, mentally hurts them. It drains them. They want to understand why you're not doing well. It scares them, all right? And so ultimately, you cause so much suffering by being wrong. And that's the whole point of understanding morality and being a moral individual, is understanding the fact that your wrong actions are hurting not just you, but everyone around you, okay? And so when you're wrong, what you do is you prove to the world that you don't know or understand things. You're ignorant to how the world works, and that actually makes you into a very dangerous individual, okay? Because if you don't know something and you somehow find yourself in a position of some sort of control or some sort of power, and you don't know things, well, your lack of knowledge is going to cause a lot of damage to a lot of different individuals, okay? So just be aware of that. But let's take a step back here, because it makes me sound like when I talk about this stuff, everyone gets this idea that I want everyone to be perfectly right all the time and never make mistakes. That is not what I'm saying, all right? And I understand that that's what it sounds like I'm saying, but that's not what I'm saying, because we cannot fear being wrong. Remember, we can't fear chaos, okay? We're human. We're supposed to make mistakes. We're supposed to make errors and be wrong from time to time, okay? In fact, we're going to talk about this a little later on, because being wrong is part of the learning process. Being wrong is how we learn what the right thing to do is. We have to go into the chaos of the unknown, remember? And when we do that, we will inevitably commit error after error after error in the process of transforming the chaos of the unknown into the known, because that's the process by which that's done, okay? So committing wrongs is how we learn, and the right thing to do, and what the right thing to do is, and this is largely all that the idea of original sin in Judeo-Christianity is trying to express, okay? We, as humans, are all sinners, all right? It doesn't matter how moral you think you are or how correct or how right you think you are. You make errors, okay? That's part of being human. You're a sinner, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that, all right? That's actually a good thing. It's a freeing thing. It allows us to feel okay with the fact that sometimes we commit these wrongs that hurt other people in the process. We just have to understand what to do when we commit a wrong, okay? Because it's called apologizing, and we're going to talk about that in a much greater detail later on, because there's a lot more going on with apologizing than just saying you're sorry, okay? And so, we have to be wrong from time to time in order to find out what's right, and that's okay. We're all sinners. That's all that means, all right? We can do good, and we can do wrong, and we have to do each one from time to time. All right, so in summary, a right is an action that does not cause harm to other sentient beings. A wrong is an action that does cause harm to other sentient beings. To be right is to be moral, correct, and good. To be wrong is to be immoral, incorrect, and evil. The more you act in accordance with natural law, the more right you are, the more correct you are, the more moral and good you are. The more that you act against natural law, the more wrong you are, the more incorrect you are, the more immoral and evil you are. So correct yourself. So We'll talk about this stuff more deeply, about what it means to do no harm and acting in accordance with natural law in a couple of videos where I'm actually going to show you the boundary conditions by which what a wrong action is, because there's only 6 wrongs that we should not do. We can do all 6 of them, but we shouldn't do them because those wrong actions cause harm to other sentient beings. And so we'll be drawing a boundary line around them so that you know what these wrongs are, so that you can avoid them to the best of your ability and test this out. See how much more successful you are when you avoid those 6 wrongs at all costs. And so we'll talk about that later on. And so we defined consciousness, we defined morality, I defined the terms within morality, and now I feel comfortable enough moving on into this introduction to morality topic. So we can take a deeper look into this topic, and that's what we're going to do. And this is probably where I'm going to break the videos up if you want to see the part 1 and the part 2. Okay, so, all right, now, since I believe that the definitions have been cleared up to the best of my ability, I feel comfortable moving on and diving deeper into this topic of morality. And understand, before we get into this, to don't take this stuff too seriously, okay? This stuff is going to be a little silly in the beginning, especially early on, because we're going to be talking about some pretty obvious things. And I feel like people, when they see obvious answers to things of very basic things, they're like, well, that's obvious. Everyone knew that. Well, to be fair, I didn't know this stuff. And I have to understand that perhaps there's other people out there who don't know this stuff as well. And so, with that being said, we're going to talk about something that's kind of silly, kind of obvious, and but I just want to clear it up because we have to talk about this stuff because it's important. And so, I want you to understand me. So we have to answer this question. How does consciousness form the basis of human morality? Well, what we know about consciousness, what we know about human consciousness, is that it's all about experience. It's all about doing things and becoming things, taking action in the real world, getting results, creating things, all right? And so, if we want a particular result to occur, if we want to do a particular thing, if we want to become a particular thing, if we want to create a particular thing, well, if we want those results, there's only a few ways to actually create those results, to actually create the results that we want in our lives, to do the things that we want, all right? If we want certain results, there's certain particular things that we need to do, and those things are to get those results, and those things are right actions, correct actions, okay? I don't think anyone can deny this, and I don't know how to say that more simply, okay? So we're just going to do a silly example. Take my cup of water. If I want water from this cup to go into my body, well, there's a right way to drink from this cup of water. That's the right way to drink water, okay? It's the right way because it got the result that I wanted to, and it didn't cause any harm to any sentient beings, all right? So that's the right way to do it, all right? There's only really a few right ways to drink from a cup of water if you want the result of water getting inside of your body. There's the way that I did it. You can have a straw, use a straw. And you can also lap up the water like a dog, But at the end of the day, there's a most right answer. That's sipping like that. And then there's, the straw, which is kind of right, but you may not have a straw, which that would destroy that right action. And then also the lapping it up like a dog. It's not a very effective way to get water inside of our bodies because we're humans and not dogs. And so, let me keep this up. With that being said, there's only a few right ways to get the result that I want, to get the experience that I want, to get the action that I want. But there's a myriad amount of wrong ways to drink water. There's millions of different wrong ways to drink water. If I try to drink from down here, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to get the result that I want. If I try to drink the water and I keep the cup all the way out here, and I try to pour it out from over here, that's not going to get water into my body either. And there's, you can think of a million different silly ways to fail at drinking water. But at the end of the day, there's only a few right ways and a whole lot of wrong ways to drink water. And from that point, I also want to bring up this other idea, because people like to look at this morality stuff and logic as not very entertaining. And fair enough, because there is an art and a science, okay? There's an art and a science to drinking water, to drinking from a cup, right? The science is what we already talked about. It's just whatever gets the water into your mouth properly, all right? Gets you the result that you want. So, sipping water. That's the science, all right? It works. It works. That's all that science is about. Things that work. However, there's all these other things that are technically unnecessary to drinking water that you can also do. And they aren't wrong, all right? Because, I still get the desired result that I want, right? I want the water to be in my body. So I still get those things, but I'm doing all of these other unnecessary things that makes the process of drinking water more entertaining. So, for example, I stick my pinky out. People do that, from SpongeBob SquarePants. When in doubt, pinky out, So that's interesting. It's entertaining, all right? And then, I could also do a cilantro, I could do a cheers, a toast before drinking, cheers. That is entertaining. It just makes life more enjoyable. It doesn't make the action wrong, all right? Because it's art, all right? It's just making life better. That's what art is all about, okay? So, cheers. I just wanted to make that distinction as we move forward, because it's not wrong, all right? The only time that art becomes wrong, in my opinion, is when the result from the art causes you to fail, to be wrong, to not get the water in your mouth. So it's not art to try to drink water from down here. It's just annoying because it's wrong. It doesn't get you the result that you want. So ultimately, that is morality, all right? That's everything that I just went over. That's what I'm talking about with morality, okay? In order to get the things that we say that we want, success, in whatever success means to you, we have to do certain actions that are called right actions. And we have to execute or do them properly or correctly, or we won't get the things that we say that we want. And this is why I believe that a deep understanding of morality, which again is the principles concerning the distinction between right action and wrong action, lies at the very heart of all success, lies at the very heart of natural law itself. So, morality, drinking water, pretty silly, pretty simple. It's pretty simple stuff, right? Well, morality is really a very simple topic, okay? It's just whatever is the right action that gets you to the result that you want. But, we've got a whole lot of other stuff to talk about. I hope you can tell that the video doesn't just end here, because morality has a lot of interesting nuances, okay? So, for example, when it comes to doing things more complex than drinking water, how do we come to know what to do or what the right thing to do is, so that we can actually do that right thing? Because that's an interesting phenomenon, We know that there's correct actions to get the things that we say that we want, right? Well, how do we find out what those right actions are? Well, consciousness itself is experience. So you live life, all right? You do things. You say, I want to build a birdhouse, right? So you go and you build a birdhouse. And if the birdhouse doesn't come out exactly how you wanted it to, that's okay, because you can build a second birdhouse. And from the experience of building the first birdhouse, you can tell that there's certain things that you have to do for the second birdhouse. And then likewise for the third, fourth, fifth, and the 100th one. And by the 100th one, you're probably making some pretty nice birdhouses, pretty unique ones as well. Because remember, this is all about doing and creating, okay? You don't just make one thing and you say, all right, done with living life. No, you make it another one. 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 3.1, 3.2. So on and so forth. That's the evolution of apps in those little numbers that they have. So that's one way to do it. And what happens during that process is you commit a lot of wrong actions. You make a lot of mistakes. You commit a lot of errors. You do things properly, but not the most right in a lot of situations as well. And so through conscious or unconscious trial and error, you eliminate wrong answers and carve out what are the right answers for your life, for your actions, for the results that you want for yourself. And, we've talked about this earlier. This is going into the unknown. This is experiencing what you don't know, learning, processing the data structures, and coming to conclusions based upon those data structures, using that data structures to inform yourself on what the right thing to do is, and then acting upon that information. And so generally speaking, the only way to generate order in your life is to choose the right decision in that particular situation and execute that right decision properly, okay? This is actually called wisdom, all right? So if you choose the wrong decision, but still execute that wrong decision properly, then your outputted action still generates chaos for your life. If you choose the wrong decision and executed that wrong decision improperly, then your outputted action generates chaos in your life. But if you choose the right decision, but executed that right decision improperly, wrongly, incorrectly, then your outputted action still generates chaos in your life. The only way to manifest order from your actions, from your decisions, from your right decisions, from your correct actions and executions, is to choose the right decision and execute that right decision properly, okay? And how we get there with the use of conscious experience is by doing those first three things over and over and over again until we do it properly and execute on it properly. But understand that you have to make errors in order to find out what the right answer is and how to properly execute on that right answer. So, as you can see, failure is built into the system. So expect failure, let failure energize you, because every failure that you make, every wrong action that you commit gets you one step closer to the right action, to the right decision, and the right and proper execution, okay? So we're going to talk about failure a lot because it's fundamental to this process, it's fundamental to our success, and it cannot be something that we're trying to avoid in our lives, all right? So never worry about failure, because failure is the only way for us to learn. The only way for, and ultimately the only way for us to actually fail, to truly fail, is to quit. That's the only way that you actually truly fail, all right? And so, nothing ultimately trumps experience, but the interesting thing about being human is that we can also think, the interesting thing about being human and the interesting thing about our reality that we find ourselves in is that we can also learn from other people's experiences who can teach us and tell us what the right thing to do is. And as long as we properly execute what that right thing to do is in the right situation, proper circumstance, that will work. And that's fascinating to me because it doesn't have to be that way, all right? So we can actually learn from other people, utilize those right decisions in our lives without actually having to go through the process of failing over and over and over again until we find the right answer. And that's amazing to me. And that's why there's all these how-to videos on YouTube, because those people are telling everyone else how to do certain things. And so it saves you a whole bunch of time if you're able to execute on what they're talking about properly. And that's fascinating to me. But I also want to point out that this exactness between somebody giving you a correct answer, a right answer, and it perhaps not working properly in your life. So if you're trying to learn how to start a business or something, and you're watching all these tutorials on how to start a business and it's not working for you properly, we have to factor in circumstance as well, okay? Because circumstances can and do change, and they're changing very rapidly, especially in the internet marketing field. So what worked 6 months ago probably doesn't work as effectively anymore right now. But that doesn't actually change the formula itself, all right? It doesn't change the formula. It just changes the numbers in the formula. It just changes the how in the formula, okay? So I just want to point out the exactness of circumstance, and then we're going to do an example of these changings of circumstances. So an exactness of circumstance is like playing a video game, like playing Mario 64. The game forces you to make decision after decision after decision that either results in you winning the game or failing at winning the game, which means, you keep playing until you win, you die, and then you play again. And the only way that you actually truly lose is if you quit playing the game before you win the game. But for anyone who plays the game, no matter how wealthy or poor you are or any of that stuff, It doesn't matter because the circumstance is exactly the same for each person playing the game. And what this means is that whatever the right move, the right behavior, the right action is for one person playing the game, it will be the same or extremely similar to another individual. Maybe there are other ways to win the game, but for a game like Mario 64, there's only a few particular ways to move across the field, the playing field. And so what works for one individual will probably almost certainly work for another individual playing that game because of the exactness of circumstances. And this is just like in life, okay? If somebody's already answered the question to the problem and it's proven to work, then within our reality, it will probably work for you as well, for you and me as well. And to me, that's just incredible. It doesn't have to be that way, but it does. It works, okay? And for human consciousness, what was the successful, right, correct thing to do in the past tends to be correct for our modern times as well. But we have to think deeper than just the how, okay? We have to understand what the principles are. This is a fundamentally important thing because this is different than just drinking from a cup of water, all right? But understand that drinking from a cup of water, that hasn't changed since for 5,000 years. So what are other right things, right principles that we can utilize and then just understand that we have to change the numbers within the formula based upon our modern times. And so let's do a deeper example than drinking a cup of water. Let's talk about financial success. This is what people like to talk about, right? Financial success. Well, in the past, right, we're talking about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, the way to be financially successful was generational, all right? That means two things. It means it took a lot of time to generate wealth back in the 1100s, okay? It took a lot of time to do that. It was concentration of energy. This was your life, okay? If you wanted to save money and become wealthy, it took a long time, 20, 30 years, but generational also means beyond your life as well. So there's that. And then there's focus on doing one thing well, doing it better than anyone else. Just one thing. You just have to do one thing more effectively than everyone else in your town, in your city, your country. So that's why you have mason work, blacksmiths, making fishing nets, whatever. Doesn't matter. As long as you do that one thing well, and then you do the third thing, which is save. You gotta save your money. That worked for the Babylonians, that worked for the Egyptians, that worked for Christians for the next 2,000 years. It works for us today. Save your money. Save your money. That works for everyone if you want financial success. So, also understand the point of pointing out the generational wealth creation process. That existed back in the day because you couldn't trust anybody. The only people that you could trust, because there was no contracts back then, there was no police force that was like, hey, you guys stole from somebody else. You just if you wanted to steal from somebody, you just stole from them and murdered them and then left. So that meant that you couldn't trust anyone back in the day, all right? And, today's really, it's no different, all right? There's only a few people that you can really, truly trust. And those people, you can trust them because you created life for them. So they kind of owe you one, all right? And what I'm talking about here is a family, all right? And you got to keep that wealth in the family. So strong family focus is also a fundamental key, a fundamentally important thing for you to focus on, because there's only a few people that you can trust in the reality that we find ourselves in, and because you could also use your children as free labor for in exchange for food for them, in exchange for shelter, and ultimately in exchange for the children understanding that they're going to get your wealth when you die. So that's a good deal. It's not slavery. I hate it when people when they say that people who use their children for work, that's slavery, all right? It's not. There's an exchange there. There's consent there, all right? So it's not. I'm not saying that you can abuse your kids. I'm just saying that it's just silly to draw that conclusion, because that money's got to go somewhere when you die. It goes to your kids, obviously. So back then, just like today, so this is for investments, all right? So if you want to invest in something, back then, just like it is today, the only true investment that is proven 100% of the time to always be a successful investment is land ownership. investment in land. That has not changed today either. And so, long-term focused savings, focus on doing one thing well, strong family bonds, land ownership. These are the 4 principles. This is what the 4 things that you have to do in order to have financial success in your life. Properly executing on these 4 right actions will make you financially successful today. And these were actions that were instrumental and fundamental in forming the successful monarchies of the past. All right? This is how those monarchies were created. That's why they care so much about family, because it matters. It's one of the principles. They know that they're keeping the money in the family. They know that they can marry into other families that have money. All right? And then that means that doubles their money or triples it. You know? They understand this stuff. We have to understand this stuff as well. Just because we're not kings and queens doesn't mean that we can't utilize these principles in our own lives. All right? And this family stuff is very important. And I'm going to talk about this stuff a lot later on when I do start focusing on financial success, because I know that that's what people like to talk about. And I'm really looking at you guys, you know, the guys, the men, the boys. You're not men, you're boys. All right? If you want to be successful, then it's time to grow up. Long-term focused savings. Focus on doing one thing well. Strong family bonds. Land ownership. The formula hasn't changed for us today. That is the same formula that will make you successful today if you do those 4 things. This is what is right in terms of producing the outcome of financial success in your life. What has changed, however, is our circumstance. But this doesn't change the formula. It just changes the numbers in the formula. It just changes how we do those 4 things, how we achieve those 4 things, okay? So these are the particulars, and I'm pointing this out because we can't ignore the particulars when trying to come to right decisions. We can't ignore particular factors for the individual, changing forces, for the collective level, okay? These are the changing of circumstances, and they're important because the changing of circumstances, the point of bringing them up right now is that they don't change the right answer. The right answer is still the same. How we achieve the right answer, how we create that result in the reality that we find ourselves has, however, changed. And that's why I don't focus on the best way to make money or the best way to sell a t-shirt or the best way to run a business, because that's going to change. That's the formula. That's the how. That's the easy part. The hard part is locating the tried and true principles that work and focusing on them alone. So, staying on financial success. The right answers are the same. How we execute, however, has changed. How people best made money to save the money in the 1100s is different to how people best made money to save that money in 1980. And how people best made money in 1980 is also different to how we best make money today to save that money. But the saving never changes. The doing one thing and one thing well never changes. The focused on strong family bonds hasn't changed either. Neither has saving generationally, saving for long periods of time, not just 6 months or a year. And so, just to point this out, this change, in 1980, it largely made sense to work for a big business because this business would take care of you, give you a good starting salary. It would offer a pension after 20 years. Oh, that's nice. Nice of them. Health benefits. It would offer health benefits for you. And all this other stuff. And then in the 1980s, what you did with your extra money is you invested in these wonderful things called bonds, because the bonds were at like 13%. So you give somebody $1 for a bond, you give the government $1 for their bond, and they give you 13 cents extra every time they pay out. So it's like literally free money. So you give somebody like $1,000 a month into these things, you're getting like $113 just for a $1,000 investment. That's a 13% ROI. That's incredible. That's better than most businesses. That's wonderful. Well, we have to face facts today that model of how to make money so that we can save that money has changed. All right. Today, big businesses aren't really taking care of their employees. They don't offer pensions anymore or good starting salaries. Usually you have to earn your way into a business now. You have to do an internship and work for free for like 6 months. This is a nasty thing to do to somebody, work for free. Because you know what that is? That's slavery, all right? And also on top of this, bonds are only at 3.9%, okay? So they're not at 13% anymore. They're 10% lower. That's a pretty low ROI. It's still a successful ROI because it's beating the rate of inflation, but that's it's no good. Don't invest in bonds anymore. Not until they go higher. So saving is still the name of the game, but how we make that money has changed because unlike in 1980, thanks to the internet, access to customers is nearly limitless. And since there's this great access to customers, you can sell yourself much more effectively than working for someone else, exchanging your time for money. And so what you do is you can locate products to sell, services to offer to other people, grow a social following, get in front of a camera or behind a computer screen and create content. Content is king these days. And investing in yourself, which is ultimately investing in your ultimate product, which is you. The individual is the product of today, okay? And, you can utilize nearly a limitless amount of niches that exist out there for you to become very effective at and to be helpful for other individuals or sell particular products to particular niches where these niches need these products in order to function. And so you can also sell your brand, sell your influence. And you can do this, and this brand and this influence, this is you, what we're talking about, just you, all right? And that is something that has value. And we're going to talk a lot about that later on, because you can sell this to as many people as possible today. Couldn't do that in the 1980s. So when I say that we have to face facts, I'm not one of those butthurt people that simply because, we don't make money the way that we used to make money, that somehow that's worse, that we're worse off today than in 1980. Heck, no, we are so much better off today. We got computers in our pockets. We have an ability to express ourselves, to prove to other people just how valuable we are. They don't have that. They didn't have that in the 1980s. You had to work for a big business, all right? Not today. It's changed. Also, what we invest in has changed. You have cryptocurrency today. Not a great investment. Land ownership is still the best way to make money. And guess what? It's actually easier to buy a home today in the United States of America. I don't know about other countries. It's easier to buy a home today than at any point in human history. It's easier to buy a house today than in the 1980s, certainly. Because with those bonds being at 13%, that meant that mortgage rate was super high as well. So you had to pay all this extra money for a down payment on a home back then. Today, we don't have that problem. Mortgage rates are as low as they've ever been. They're at like 3.89% or whatever. So the idea that you can't buy a house today simply because the price has gone up, that's silly. First-time home buyers get all of these deals that didn't exist in the 1980s, all of these extra deals. And on top of that, the mortgage rates are so much lower. So we can purchase the things that are guaranteed to be to create success for ourselves and our lives. And just like today, compared to yesteryear, home ownership has changed a lot as well. Okay, we have more opportunity for home ownership because we have rentals, right? And we have Airbnb, and we have that other one, I forget the other one's name, but we have Airbnb. And I know people who just buy houses simply so that they can Airbnb out the house. And they're crushing it, all right? They're making money that we couldn't fathom of in 1980 through rentals to cities that aren't really tourist destinations, simply because people like to visit other cities. We got all this extra disposable income, and nobody is saving their money anymore. That is different from what it was in the 1980s. So the point is, the formula hasn't changed. The numbers have changed. The how has changed. So just the execution has changed. And it's not become more competitive. It's less competitive. But there's just a lot more people doing it because of how not competitive it is anymore. Just because there's so many more niches, so many more different ways to be successful. These things didn't exist just 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And the best way to make money today, the best way to be financially successful today, how to do that is different. But the underlying principles have never and will never change. Okay? And understand that I'm going to make a much more in-depth video on financial success and the principles of it later on. But I figured that people would enjoy this little rant, and so that's why I did it. And so, what does knowing morality have to do with success? Well, I hope by now you can tell that there seems to be an obvious connection between doing right action and success. Because if you want to be successful, there are certain principled right things that you need to do in order to be successful. And you have to do that right thing and execute properly, because what that will do is offer you a higher probability of success at anything, really, because doing the right thing at the right time will obviously offer you a higher probability for success compared to doing the wrong thing at any time, really. This is obvious stuff. So clearly, doing the right thing is good for success, because if we do enough right things in a row, our probability of success will increase. So first, because of this obvious connection between success and choosing right action, it becomes very important to know what the right answers are and to already know how to properly execute the right action before you find yourself in a moment where a decision must be made, before whether you have to choose right action over wrong action. And so this is going back to experience. It's all about experience. It's what this is all about. Expanding your consciousness, having more experience, experiencing more things, so that you know the right answers to more problems in your life, so that you can utilize your past conscious experiences to guide you to the right answers in the present moment. And understand that this is the deep-held, hidden meaning in the story or in the movie of Slumdog Millionaire, okay? That's all that movie was about. It's about some dude who had all of these experiences in his life that gave him the right answers to the questions when he needed those right answers most. All right? Very interesting stuff. So, how do we find out what the right answers are? We've already talked about this, but consciousness, experience, over time. The fact of the matter is this, that the answers to what the right thing to do have already been answered by all the smart people of the past. So all we have to do is apply the best tried and true right answers that have stood the test of time. Because if anything can stand the test of time, understand that the test of time is entropy. This is the second law of Newton's thermodynamics. Everything dies over time. So if something can survive that destruction, being ripped apart into nothingness for an extended period of time, those things are strong, they're powerful. They have meaning and purpose. They mean a lot of stuff. And so for the most part, the strongest, most everlasting things that exist are ideas. And ideas do a pretty good job at standing the test of time. And so particular answers that have worked for millions of people in the past will probably work for you today. Probably almost certainly. And again, like we talked about, the how is what tends to change. So further, we can also come to know the right answers ourselves. And so this is the next layer to this. This is how we start talking about emotion, okay? This is how we get emotion back into the fold of making proper decisions. And so we can also come to the right answer ourselves with combining the function of our conscience and our common sense. Our conscience is our intrinsic, instinctual, subconscious connection to what the right thing to do is in a particular situation. And common sense, also known as, I'm just using this as a street smarts, just gives us reasons why we believe in what's, really nothing more than a feeling, okay? Ultimately giving us the confidence that we need in order to act and execute properly, okay? Because remember, I just want to point out, there's nothing magical here, all right? You're just working off of a feeling. When you're focused on your conscience to help guide you in a decision, when you're trying to trust your gut, you're trusting a feeling at the end of the day. And so sometimes that makes us feel not very confident in the answer that our conscience gave us. This feeling. We're just trying to trust a feeling. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what is this, grade school? It's like that. It's like, well, kind of, But what common sense does is it gives us reasons why we feel the way that we feel. So it tells us why. So like I'm letting my gut answer a question, and then my common sense, using reason, rational thinking, to explain why I believe that this is right. And those reasons actually firm up. They give us confidence, because we have to remind ourselves. It's not about just choosing the right action. It's also about executing properly. So you need confidence that your trust in this feeling was the right decision. And that's what common sense, that's what logic gives us. Confidence that we chose the right decision. So that confidence is fundamentally important, because, as I've pointed out multiple times, the execution of right decision matters. All right? It matters. So you need to be confident once you make this decision. So if you choose the right decision but execute that right decision improperly, well, I already said all this stuff. So the point is that if you're not sure about a decision, and you're going in you're making a decision based on trusting your gut, it doesn't matter how much you trust your gut, you still don't consciously know. You don't scientifically, verifiably know that this is the right decision. You're just trusting your gut. And so, having reason X, having reason Y, having reason Z behind that decision just helps with your confidence. Nothing magical here. Further, trusting your gut gives you a mechanism that you can use with confidence, that gets you to make a decision, that gets you to ante up. Because this is actually also important, okay? This is important because when an unknown choice is presented to you, you have to make a decision and you don't know what's the right answer or what the wrong answer is. The only way to get a 50-50 probability is to actually make a decision, okay? So what we have to understand is that right answers are on a spectrum, right? You have the most right, whatever is most right, and then it all ranges down until you hit a point where you're making a wrong decision, okay? So if you're given a choice, you're given reality itself, consciousness itself, whatever reality we find ourselves in, gives us a 50-50 probability as to whether we make a right decision or a wrong decision, because there's only two choices, right or wrong, right? So that's a 50-50 probability. Why we choose to trust our gut in making a decision when we don't know what the right answer is simply because we have to make a decision. And we have to understand that if a decision is not made, then you're wrong 100% of the time. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's Wayne Gretzky. Trusting your gut, at the very least, gets you in the game, all right? If it's right, if it's the right trust, you trusted your gut and it gave you the right answer, that's great, okay? You're not a magician. You just made a decision, and the probability of the right decision was 50-50. You got it right, that's great, okay? Now you know what the right thing to do is. If you got it wrong, that's okay too. That doesn't mean to just never trust your gut again, because you still have to make decisions. And it's also a good thing because you did the wrong thing, and now you know that that's the wrong decision. So, if you win, you win. If you lose, you learn. It's great. Okay, so moving on. I also want you to see that the study of morality is the study of the emotional state. It's the study of our emotional state. It's the study of the aspect of consciousness that focuses on our feelings. It's a study that allows us to better understand an entire aspect of human consciousness that tends to be largely ignored or misunderstood by the society that I find myself in, Western civilization. Our society doesn't talk about our feelings, and that's interesting. And it's also interesting that we just so happen to have a mental health crisis in Western society as well, in Western civilization as well. And that's largely because we don't understand our emotional state. We don't know why it's making us feel the way that it's making us feel. Okay, and that's a very uncomfortable position to be in, to not understand why you're feeling bad. Okay, well, morality helps that because it helps you understand your feelings, because it tells us that committing right action makes you feel good. Doing right action makes you feel good. Doing wrong action makes you feel bad. So if you're doing wrong action, so if you're feeling bad all the time, all you have to do is observe your actions, your behavior in the real world, study it, write things down, journal it, try to figure out what you're doing wrong. Because for most cases, what you're doing wrong is you're not doing a darn thing. You're not doing anything new. You're not experiencing new things. You're not creating anything. You're not using your hands. You're not becoming something new. You're not doing anything. You're not in the game. You're not anteing up. You're not doing anything. That's going to make you feel like you have no purpose. It's going to make your life feel meaningless. It's going to make life existence itself feel meaningless, purposeless. That's going to make you feel terrible, all right? It's going to make you feel terrible. So, I want you to understand. We're going to talk about this a lot. But what this allowed me, the study of morality allowed me to do, was it allowed me to open the doorway into my emotional state, which was, at first, terrifying, okay? But so incredibly rewarding. It allowed me to open the door of this emotional state without blasting me, all right? Because for the most part, people keep their emotions closed because they don't want to feel them, because they don't know what they mean. It scares them, okay? And I got this template that says, I'm feeling good because I'm doing something good, or I'm feeling bad because I'm doing something wrong, okay? And it's fairly accurate. So now when the emotions come on, I feel them and I go, I know why I'm feeling that way, all right? I just have to look at my behavior. What am I doing wrong? All right, correct that. Well, now I feel a little bit better, all right? Hey, look at that. It helps go into that. It allows you to go into those feelings. And, you have to understand that you've accrued a lot of mental trauma in your life. You have decade-old unhealed emotional wounds that are still there once you start delving into your emotional state. And it's going to be hard. It's an extremely hard thing when you understand this morality template. You're like, why do I still feel bad? I'm looking at my life. I've been looking at my life for the last 3 months. Why do I still feel bad? Well, you might have an unhealed emotional trauma that you need to go into. So you need to go into your past life, into decades-old experiences, and try to figure out what occurred that was wrong back then that makes you feel terrible today. So that's the worst part about this process, is the fact that you're starting at, let's say, age 30. So that's 30 years where you had no idea why you were feeling the way that you're feeling. You have no idea how to correct the errors and the injustices and the terrible things that were happening to you for your first 30 years of your life. You don't just start going, okay, just have to look at what is going on today. You have to look at all that past experience. And it's hard to remember all of that stuff if you haven't been journaling for your whole life, So it's a fun experience. But really what it allowed me to do is grab the reins of my emotional state, because it helped tell me why I feel the way that I feel. And it gave me a template to controlling my emotions. And when I say controlling my emotions, the last thing I want you to think is that I'm hiding away from my emotions, or I'm trying to shrink my emotions, or confine them in a box or something. Grabbing the reins of a horse doesn't mean that you're taking the horse and putting him in the stable. It means you're grabbing the reins because you're going to take that horse. You're going to let that horse ride you to victory. Yeah? So that's what we're talking about here. Riding your emotional state to victory. Because there is stuff going on in our emotional state that is allows me to see things that I could not see, feel things. Look at art. Yeah, looking at art. I also can allow myself to experience music that makes me cry, movies that make me cry as well, make me sad, because I understand why I'm crying, why it makes me sad. Which is the big deal, because, we look at those emotions as negative. Oh, you shouldn't cry. You're a man. You shouldn't cry, right? No, you're a man, so express the emotion that you want to express, okay? That you choose to express. Because positive and negative emotions, they're emotions, they feel, all right? So feeling pain, that's an experience, okay? It lets you know that you're alive. It's good. And so, yeah, coming to understand my emotional state was a big deal, and it's helped me a lot. It's the driving force behind my actions now. It's the fuel that fires me up, gets me ready, gets me going in the morning. I think of my reasons why I'm waking up at 3 a.m. to get these videos out, right? And the reasons aren't really motivating. You know what's motivating? The feeling. The feeling, the excitement of getting in front of the camera and stuttering and saying, not knowing what I'm going to say next. Trusting the process. Trusting the fact that I don't need people to watch these videos right now. I need to get more skilled. I need to know what the right thing to do is. And I can only figure that stuff out if I have this drive behind myself. This drive, this emotional drive. We're going to talk about it, okay? Point is, bringing this up, is that we have to understand the intrinsic connection between our behavior and our emotional state. Our emotional state is a way that we can utilize our emotional state to control our emotions, to grab our emotions by the reins, use them to motivate us, stop them from devouring us by just changing your behavior. Okay? You can simply change the way that you feel simply by taking a deep breath. Taking a deep breath is an action, and it changes the way you feel. That's all that I'm talking about here. It's nothing magical here. And so, with that being said, we have to be fair about this morality being in connection to our emotional state. And Friedrich Nietzsche pointed this out so perfectly in Beyond Good and Evil, where he says that morals are only a sign language of our emotions, only a sign language of our emotions. I'm just letting you know that coming to know morality doesn't just magically give you complete control over your emotional state. All that it doesn't do that. It's not how this works. All that it does is it tells us what the right action and what the wrong action is, and we can just utilize that knowledge because we know that committing right action is going to make us feel good and committing wrong action is going to make us feel bad. That's all that it's telling us, okay? So it's not in itself the language of feeling, okay? And, we also have to acknowledge that, when it comes to the language of feeling, any sort of information that can help us understand our feelings should be welcomed information. It should never be rejected just because it's not perfect, okay? So we take that information, that morality helps us with our emotional state, and then we also acknowledge that there's more to understand when it comes to our emotional state than just right and wrong behavior. And so the point is to utilize this stuff because feelings are tough. They're tough for individuals in our society because our society utilizes written language. And written language, English, words and grammar, it's not a very conducive language to help us decipher the language of our feelings. Emotion speaks feeling, how we feel, all right? And, parse English into its constituent parts, give words and grammar. With feeling, this is why morality is so fundamental as the template here, feeling can be parsed, the language of feeling can be parsed into two things as well. Not language and grammar, but emotions are segregated whether they're positive or negative. Okay? This is reward and punishment, and this is what we're going to talk about next, because believe it or not, this is pretty fascinating stuff to me. The language of feeling is a language based on justice, okay? Lady Justice is a lady because anything that is, any god, any deity that is a woman, tends to be all about the emotional state and fertility too. But the emotional state, the emotional aspect of consciousness, that's what a feminine deity tends to represent. Lady Justice is a lady because the divine feminine represents the emotional aspect of consciousness, and Lady Justice is a moral, emotional metaphor representing the notion of justice itself. Okay? So justice, break that word apart, you have the word just, and then ice. And then ice as a suffix just states the quality or the quality or the state of a thing. So quality or the state of just. What is just? Just is just what is right, correct, moral, and true. And so justice is the exercise of authority in vindication of right by assigning reward and punishment. Reward and punishment. Carrot and stick. Justice is righting a wrong. Justice is vengeance against the wrongs, against a wrong. Justice is the quality of being fair and just, moral soundness, and conformity to the truth. All right? And so this is from the Federalist Papers, number 51 by James Madison. Justice is the end of government. It is the end of civil society. it ever has been and ever will be pursued until it be obtained or until liberty be lost in the pursuit. Keep the idea of pursuit in mind, because it's the second time that I've pointed out that term with the use of a quote from around that time period when the United States was being formed, okay? So it's pursuit, all right? And so the other time was, talk about the Declaration of Independence, unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit. Happiness is a pursuit. So, justice makes us feel good because just, right, moral, correct, true, those things make us feel good. And unjust things, or injustice, makes us feel bad because injustice is not justice. Not justice, not just, not correct, incorrect, immoral, evil, wrong. Moral, reward, and punishment. I want to point out that all the modern Western court systems in existence today find their origins in religion, in Judeo-Christianity in particular. And this is because religion primarily focuses its attention on the emotional, ethereal aspect of consciousness because it is the toughest aspect of consciousness to logically contend with. And it's because emotion also, and they focused on that because the emotion also holds the deepest and greatest mysteries of human consciousness within it. One of these things is the notion of justice itself. And so it's the hardest aspect to consciously understand. And this is why religious people, sometimes get conflated with moral people, with being moral, because morality is the study of right and wrong, which gives us insight on our emotional state, which is what religion tries to do. And so, we talk about the Passion of Christ, or Buddha's life is suffering. These Passion of Christ and life is suffering, these are fundamental tenets in both Christianity and Buddhism. And passion and suffering, those are feelings, okay? They're trying to explain feelings. So, it's in these feelings that we find meaning and purpose, that we create meaning and purpose. And it's in these feelings where our ancestors stumbled upon and discovered Lady Justice herself. So, as we learned earlier, whether positive or negative, our emotions exist to get us in motion. It does this the same way all motivation occurs, through reward for doing the right thing and punishment when you do the wrong thing. This is the origins of justice itself. When we commit right actions, we're rewarded with positive feelings, with pleasure, which tell us to keep doing that right thing. And then when we commit wrongs, we're punished with negative feelings, with pain, which tell us to stop doing that action. And understand that our society is built around this human system of reward and punishment at the collective level in order to create a just and fair society. Understand, has this idea of perfectly just and fair society has it been perfectly implemented? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying, because it in of itself, because of the nature of our emotional state, is a pursuit. A perfectly just society is a utopia. It's a goal. It's a goal that will probably always be out of our reach. The point is that it ought to be pursued. So coming back to James Madison put it, justice is the end of government. It is the end of civil society. It has ever been and ever will be pursued until it be obtained or until liberty be lost in the pursuit. Perfect justice is the end of government because you don't need a government. Remember, government exists solely to protect and secure the rights of the people so that they're not infringed upon. You don't need a government anymore if you have a perfectly just and fair society. And so this utopia is something that we ought to be pursuing. And he said we should be pursuing until it be obtained or until we lose everything. Until we lose everything or until we lose everything in the process of trying to form a perfectly just and fair society. So understand that to America's founding fathers, liberty was everything to them. Everything. Okay? And they were willing to give that up in the pursuit of a fair and just society. Perfect justice. That's Moby Dick level obsession for this pursuit of justice. And I do highly suggest reading Moby Dick to understand this idea of pursuit, because that's what we're about to talk about next. Because what's the big deal with this word pursuit? Well, our emotional state exists simply to get us in motion, and one of the best ways to get somebody to get somebody to go in motion, to get in motion, and to stay in motion, so they don't keep stopping and thinking about things. Well, you want to just get somebody to stay in motion. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. Newton's laws of thermodynamics. Well, one of the best ways to do that is to get them to pursue something. Okay? And it doesn't matter what the thing is. It doesn't matter. Like, what kind of thing you want to pursue. Pursue a ball. Go pursue a ball. Go pursue a friend. Go play tag. Chase somebody. You'll be in motion if you have something to pursue. Pursue a woman. Pursue $1 million. It doesn't matter. Just have a pursuit. Have a goal. Okay? Emotion doesn't concern itself with what you're pursuing or why it's being pursued. Okay? Those are thinking man's questions. We can talk about that later on. But emotions are all about directions, which is why this aspect of consciousness, or our conscience, is represented as a compass, as a moral compass, because it's all about direction. It's all about trying to get us to go somewhere. And the compass doesn't tell you where you're going. It's just telling you, hey, follow this line. Just choose something to pursue, and we'll go, and I'll show you how to get there. Just follow the compass. But you still need to choose something to pursue for the compass to work. Okay? So, emotions are not about why you're going or where you're going or even how you're going to get there. It's all about the pursuit. This is instinctual, okay? We have to understand ourselves as predators because we're humans. We're chasing down, back in the day, we were chasing down gazelles with nothing but a spear, and like a piece of flint at the edge of our spear. And we did that, and there were certain feelings that are connected to pursuing that thing. You have the feeling of hunger in your belly. That's a good reason why you're doing the thing, why you're hunting the gazelle. You wouldn't hunt the gazelle if you weren't hungry. Too much energy, too much work. So you need that reason why. It's helpful, but ultimately it's the feeling that created that reason. The feeling of hunger created that reason. All right? And then so we started the process of pursuit. And so in those moments when we're the hunter, this feeling of hunting a prey is something that is instinctual because we are hunters. And it feels incredible. We're pursuing something. We're doing something with our life. Life is not meaningless right now. It's life or death. I have to destroy this thing and devour it. I have to be evil. I have to break natural law to do that because that's what sentient beings have to do in order to survive. And it's a much better feeling to be the hunter than the hunted, okay? Because when you're hunted, that's a terrible feeling. But it's a feeling nonetheless. And it does give you a pursuit as well. The pursuit is to get as far away from whoever or whatever is hunting you as quickly as possible. But it's a terrible feeling compared to being the hunter. Because that's just trying to survive, okay? That's a fearful emotion. Fear is the emotion of survival, right? Hunting, that's a higher order function. It's a higher order emotional feeling. So, understand that human consciousness was molded into what it is today at around the time that we were hunter-gatherers, okay? And so, and also understand, when I'm talking about hunting for gazelle, like hunting for living animals, or just gathering mushrooms or whatever, both of those are a pursuit, all right? Those are both pursuits. One's not better than the other, all right? Both of them have the same end goal in mind, to feed ourselves. So it's the same thing. It's the mind of the hunter-gatherer. And the mind of the hunter-gatherer finds its existence in our emotional aspect of consciousness. Because it's all about feeling, all right? We didn't think about why. We go, you just start moving to hunt. It's like, why are we hunting? Nobody asked that question because everyone's feeling the same thing. You're all starving. That's why we're hunting. You don't need to know why. You feel something in your belly. You go and you hunt. That's why we hunt. That's why animals hunt. That's why animals look for food constantly. They're hungry all the time. So the action of pursuit becomes your purpose in life. It's what creates meaning and purpose for you. What you choose to pursue is irrelevant. It's your choice. I always say, be successful. I teach people how to be successful in whatever success means to them and whatever they want to be successful in. It's because the choice of what you want to be successful in is irrelevant to me. It's the pursuit that matters, okay? What you want is irrelevant. It's the pursuit. It's the hunt. Emotion and feeling is ultimately synonymous with direction, desire, intention, achievement, goals, meaning, purpose, because that's what emotions do for us. That's what they create for us. All we have to do is choose something. Like, why is a movie meaningful to you? Because it's got a good moral in it. Okay? Why is the moral meaningful to you? It's because of the story that the moral engendered. It's the story. It's myth. It's feeling. These are what feelings give us. When you look at a piece of artwork and you're like, oh, there's something about that. There's something about that thing. It's making me feel feelings. It's getting me motivated. It's feeling that creates that. It's feeling that says that this piece of art has meaning, has purpose. Okay? And so, all we have to do is choose something to pursue. And again, anything really. Because we can listen to our feelings. Because once we choose something to pursue, all we have to do is listen to our feelings, utilize the study of morality, observe our behavior, and over time, we will learn what the right actions are that we have to do, and how to execute properly on those actions in order to get our goal, in order to achieve our goal. And once our goal is obtained, and it will be obtained so long as you never quit, all right? You will fail time and time again at achieving your goal until you have achieved your goal or until you've quit. But as long as you're motivated by the pursuit and the pursuit alone, it doesn't matter. You know you're never going to quit because you're addicted to the feeling of pursuing a goal. That's what you're addicted to. At the end of the day, it doesn't even matter once you achieve your goal. The biggest worry actually is once you do achieve your goal, because then you have to find something new to achieve. And you do that once you're healthy and ready. Once you've enjoyed the fruits of your labor, once you've enjoyed your achievement, now it's time to choose a new purpose, a new thing to start to hunt, and get ready to start from square one. And get ready to start locating, trying to figure out what the right things to do are to achieve the next goal, because they might be different. Or maybe they're not. If you achieve $1 million, that's your goal, that's what you've been pursuing all your life. Well, obtaining $2 million would probably be pretty similar to how you achieved the $1 million. So achieving a second $1 million is probably going to be a similar pursuit to how you achieved the first $1 million, except you already know all the answers. So that's helpful. So we get our happiness. Okay, so the ultimate pursuit here is happiness and success, and whatever success means to you, and whatever your goal is, and whatever you want to achieve. Because this is important. We don't actually get our happiness from right action. We don't actually get our happiness from doing the right thing. It's not where our happiness comes from. I am not happy when I do the dishes because the dishes have to be done. I'm not happy when I make my bed every morning. I'm not happy when I clean my room. That's not what makes me happy. We get our happiness in the pursuit of success, which is defined by the constant battle of overcoming the ever-present and always easier choice of doing wrong action in favor of doing the always harder and more challenging right action, simply because doing so defies evil. It defies evil itself. You defy evil itself when you choose right action over wrong action. And this defiance of evil is what generates happiness in our lives. You watch any movie, the bad guy always has all the power. The good guy's got nothing. The bad guy's like, just join the dark side. So Star Wars, original trilogy, Star Wars, okay? Not fake, not canon, Disney Star Wars. That's not real, all right? Original trilogy, Star Wars. You have Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, And he's telling Luke, hey, I got all this power. All of your friends are dying. All you have to do is the easiest thing on the face of the earth and just say that you're going to side with me. And then you get all this great stuff and wonderful, great stuff. And in the face of all of that, Luke still says no. No, I'm not doing it. And he's also not going to do it Emperor Palpatine's way. He's not going to fight. That's defiance in the face of pure evil. You do that every time you look at a donut and you say, not today, donut. You do that every time because the donut is delicious. You know that the donut's delicious, but you also know that the donut's unhealthy. It's not going to get you what you want if you're trying to be healthy, if you're trying to lose weight. You say, not today, donut. Take every action that you do in life as seriously as that, as seriously as Luke choosing to not side with pure evil. You'll get a whole lot more of enjoyment out of defying evil itself, defying wrong action. So in closing, just a little bit more, guys. Morality ultimately boils down to this one question. Will you choose will you choose right action or will you choose wrong action? I've alluded to this binary choice before. It's the same choice between love and fear, order and chaos, and good and evil. This question, will you choose right action or will you choose wrong action, forms the structure for most religions, mysticism, spirituality, societies themselves. This is karma. This is the way of the Tao. This is heaven and hell. This is the Word made flesh. All of these esoteric and misunderstood symbols and metaphors can be understood by understanding this one question, because the truth is, it's the only question in existence. It's the only thing that we as conscious, free will beings have. It's this choice. Everything else is determined. We live in a determined universe largely, except for this one choice. Good and evil. Will you choose right action or will you choose wrong action? And understanding that this is a consensual thing. You can't be forced to do good. That doesn't feel good because you're being forced. We'll talk about it. You have to choose. You, the individual, have to choose, or it doesn't feel good. If Luke was forced into fighting the Emperor, that wouldn't feel good. He wouldn't know for a fact that it was his decision. And we have to understand that's important because it's the choice. It's defying the evil. Our choice. Choosing right action over wrong action is what makes us happy. Not doing the action of right action. It's you choosing. That's what's going to make you happy. You choosing right action over wrong action. Not being forced by somebody else. You consciously choosing it. That's defiance. So, will you choose right action or will you choose wrong action? In every choice, there's always at least a most right answer. So, you think that once you learned what the right thing to do was, that life would get pretty simple, right? And once you knew how to execute on those right actions. So let's say you knew both of those things. You know what the right thing to do is, and you know how to execute on those right actions. Once you know those things, that's great, okay? But that's not wisdom. That's knowledge. Wisdom is acting on that knowledge. Action in the real world. Morality is about action in the real world. I don't care if you know everything in the universe. If you're not doing a damn thing, then you're wrong. You're not executing. You got no wisdom. You just know things. You're a very good intellectual. You're an ivory tower elite. Great. Do something with that knowledge. Prove your knowledge. Prove your worth. Prove your value. Prove meaning exists for you by doing things and being things. We got enough critics out there, all right? Do things. Create something. And we're given these moments. Also note that this question, will you choose right action or will you choose wrong action? This doesn't exist it's just one question that just exists 4 or 5 times in your life and you have to choose right action over wrong action just 4 or 5 times. This choice is a choice that's given to us in every present moment of your conscious waking life. So you're given choice after choice after choice and you get to choose in this present moment, am I going to choose right action or wrong action? And so that gives us a lifetime worth of opportunity to choose right action over wrong action. And it also gives us a lot of opportunity to fail. Again, if you win, you win. If you lose, you learn. So it doesn't matter if you fail a few times because you're going to. It's baked into the system. Also, getting close to the end, guys. I just need to point out a couple more things. This isn't a good people versus evil people thing. Stories where there's pure evil, pure good. Understand, they're just stories. Nobody's purely good and nobody's purely evil. That doesn't exist. We're humans, so every single human on the face of the earth is a mixture of both good and evil. I don't care how moral or correct or right you are, you still got evil in you if you're human. It's part of the system. And likewise, if you're a very bad, evil, wrong person and you're doing all these terrible things to everybody, I can still probably find some good in you too. Because remember, good is just right action. So you got to be doing something right in your life too. So that's what makes humans, is right and wrong, good and evil. That's what is in the heart of every man, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn points out. If only it were so simple, you know? If only it were so simple. If there were only, if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Okay, that's important because, as I pointed out multiple times, we need, as human beings, to be evil. Due to the nature of the reality that we find ourselves in, we need that evil side within us. This isn't about removing evil from ourselves, all right? It's just acknowledging that our actions in the real world have consequences, and those consequences can be negative if they're wrong actions. No, I don't want you to think about this as removing evil from ourselves, our being. We are good and evil, okay? And this is like the whole meaning behind original sin. I don't know if I brought this up already, but that's what that is. It's just saying both good and evil. Humans are both good and evil because we have this sin in us. And it's fine. We wouldn't be able to survive without it. We wouldn't. All right, we're going to talk about that too. So finally, one last thing, and we can finally close the door on this topic, or on this video, because we're going to continue talking about morality quite a bit more. So, most important thing that you should know about your actions is that you are responsible for all of your actions. No matter how much you think someone or something is in control of your actions, it's just not the case. You're responsible for your choices, whether you were coerced into making the choice or not. To understand that the feeble excuse that your boss required it, that your family or the establishment expected it, or that circumstance forced it upon you, all of that holds no truth or justification according to natural law, and you will be held liable in your emotional state. You commit wrong action, you're going to feel terrible about it still. And on top of that, if your boss is telling you to do something illegal, your boss is, if he's doing that, he's going to blame you because you're doing the action. You're going to be responsible for that action in the court of law. So this is about protecting ourselves in our reality, both realities that we find ourselves in, man-made law reality and the reality of language, and true objective reality, our emotional state. It's double whammy. You and you alone are responsible for you and you alone are answerable to the consequences of your behavior, of your actions, no matter how much you think otherwise. And really, ultimately, once you know what right action is, once you know what wrong action is, why would you ever let somebody else tell you to do something that is wrong when you know just how bad it is for you, for them, for everyone around you? Plus, why have principles at all if you're going to allow somebody else to dictate your behavior? Nothing's cooler than standing up for what is the right thing to do. You know, that's what makes cool people. You watch The Witcher on Netflix. He is willing to die all the time because he's dying for something that is right, correct, moral, true, justified. And understand that I'm not denying the fact that we live in a universe that's determined by circumstance, that can leave us bloodied and bruised. But it's our capacity to choose right action over wrong action that keeps us free and unbound, all right? You know, I'm going to end with a quote from Viktor Frankl, who proves this concept. when he wrote about his experiences in the concentration camps, where his circumstance, where everyone's circumstances, was that the prison guards held near total control over the inmates. Near total control, but not absolute control. Never absolute control, Frankl writes. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's own way in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And there were always choices to make. Every day, every hour, offered the opportunity to make a decision which determined whether you would or would not submit to those powers which threatened to rob you of your very self, your inner freedom, your sovereignty, which determined whether or not you would become the plaything of circumstance, renouncing freedom and dignity to become molded into the form of the typical inmate.